I would like I would like to ask the participants if you have questions again, but before I call on you, I would like a follow-up question with Dr. Kao. Uh, Now, having listened to insights from our expert, Professor Kim Wan, the experience in the Philippines with Cleaner Asia, also from the activities of Air Parif and your plans, how do you think this can all be integrated or be part of the development of these guidelines, for example, that EANET is thinking about? And what are the plans in Vietnam? What are your plans for this LCSUs? Maybe you can elaborate on this also for the benefit of the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. And the first question I think in Vietnam is that we are a public research institution under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment. So we support the government with the scientific research. So on that, the government will formulate and adopt the policy. Now, regarding the LCS and air quality monitoring, in Vietnam now, first, we are developing, we are thinking about expanding the LCS to have more data and we have more can improve the accuracy and the reliability of the LCS. So in Wizards and my institution, we are working with EANET, ACAP, and some ADB projects to extend more LCS in the major cities so that we can make a comparison and make the data verification in comparison with the conventional regulated monitoring network. This is our first plan. So in the next couple of years, I think there will be more LCS station will be installed in the major cities and the industrial areas. And for the second question, I think the Vietnamese government, they are well aware that there should be a more effective and comprehensive for air quality control and pollution. So with that and with the advantage of LCS, of the initial cost is low cost, so we can afford to have more coverage, expand the coverage of the monitoring, and based on that we can develop the guideline or the policy for the application and using the LCS data. But for that policy, I think with the horizon, I think at least 3 years from now, 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. That's very important. 2 to 3 years, maybe when this guidelines is completed. Of course, its main audience is for the EANET participating countries to provide guidance for the governments. But we will have a lot more of this information, I think, by that time and experience that you will be able to consider. We open for questions. Please introduce yourselves also. Sorry. Anna, okay.
First of all, thank you so much. Those were all very informative presentations. My name is Aisha. I'm from the U.S. Embassy. It seems like there's a lot of knowledge that has been gained through all of your experiences with these low-cost sensors, and yet the same questions remain in terms of data reliability, some of which you have addressed through correction factors. I was hoping you could share sort of how this knowledge can be shared across countries through EANET or other forums, because not every country in the region is on board for official use of this data. A lot of the questions, as you said, relate to data reliability. So to what extent do you look forward to, for instance, the correction factors you have, are those sensor specific? How are you looking to share that information so that others don't have to start at the same place that you did? Thank you.
Is a question for me
Yeah, you can answer, Dr. Kao, if you also like to.
Yes, actually, I think very interesting question that in Vietnam now we are working with university and so research institution. First of all, the data, the LCS reliability and the accuracy, and we are research institution, so we are open to share the data and to discuss about how affordable and how reliable they are. But at the same time, we are also talking about how can we improve integrate, first, I think not only in Vietnam, I think other countries, how to integrate the LCS with the national or the regulated monitoring network. So that is a very challenge for us now. Because still we are seeing monitor landing, the installation and more monitoring in parallel. So we share the data and how to integrate the data with the existing network is very important. And another point I just mentioned that in Hanoi we plan to integrate the weather forecasting news with the ELCS also, so that we can have a kind of integrated news monitoring service for the resident citizens. Which can be accessible to the application like smartphone or iPad. So that is our plan and also the challenge. So is it okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe from an NGO perspective also, I think the unique position we are in is we are able to work also very closely with non-government actors like the academia, but we also put emphasis on really working and collaborating very closely with the national ministries so that we are able to access the reference data that we need in putting together these case studies. And definitely these correction factors can be sensor specific, and that also puts us in a unique position. For example, when we partner with governments, they would also, like the city governments would also turn to us every time like a private sector or technology provider would reach out to them, like offering their like different brands and different technologies of sensors. And that's also where we come in, providing the technical guidance to them, like guiding them through the process of the collocation and the corrections and analysis. And definitely we do intend to publish this in a peer-reviewed journal, but we're also looking at like deepening and broadening the database first, also waiting for like official data to really come up with a robust data set that other governments can adopt. But through knowledge sharing, we are partnering with a lot of cities. We do have the Better Air Quality Conference where we will, in November 2023, and we will soon announce details on that, but we intend to showcase these success stories of cities in air quality monitoring in that event as well.
Professor Kim Wan will also respond, but this is related to a question I have in my mind also. Like, how do you observe AIT? You are a professor. How do you observe the researches that are being conducted over time now in terms of using low-cost sensors? So maybe when you respond, Madam, you can also consider this. And then Ms. Karin, we can ask you to respond as well if you are interested afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I want to thank Karin for talking about the quality of sensors. So she said that 20% of that are not working at the first place. And many of us using sensor and think that it don't have factory calibrated. Factory calibrated actually not reliable. So we need to do calibration again. And this is talking about how we share the data. If our data are good, so we are confident to share, and then disseminating the data, integrating data with the current like standard reference network. But if we ourselves not confident about our data quality, it's very difficult for us to say, okay, this is data good that you should use. So that's why I think of the standard procedure for calibration, evaluation, and some common metrics for sensor performance evaluation. And that would need to be very rigid, very rigorous procedures. But then if we follow that, then the local sensor network, and mentioned by Karin, it's not no more local sensors, no more locals. Still sensor, but no more locals. So this is a trade-off. So what we need in terms of the data quality objective, if we need the data to see hotspot in the city, of course we can deploy many sensors, and then if sensor performance uniformly, right, within the range of pollutants concentration we have. Then we deploy many sensors and we can identify hotspot. And if the industry working there and we deploy sensor around industry, we can also identify the peak when it release, illegal release of the pollution, for example. And for the research purpose, like if we do it for exposure monitoring and health effect, that is local sensor is very popular for that, or campaigning. So like that, if we actually ask women doing cooking with different type of fuel and wearing the sensor, and then when she cook with LPG, then the sensor have very low level, and she cook with corn briquettes, the sensor would jump up to 200, 300 microgram per cubic meter. This is awareness raising of the source, and that leads to some action. And then talking about solid waste open burning, that we have some project, and that we see a lot of solid waste open burning. And if the one who burns solid waste also wearing sensor, so we can raise awareness of crop residual open burning like rice straw. So sensor are actually very useful for many, many purposes, right? But then if you ask about the regulatory purpose, so I still do not think that it is considered as actually suitable for the time being, because it's a lot of challenge. And if we try to take on those challenges and try to solve the problem, and as I mentioned earlier, it's no more low cost. It should be medium or very high cost. If we involve AI to calibrate the sensor with relative humidity and temperature range, and that is automatic and give us good data, but then very high tech. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Kim Wan. Very insightful. Of course, cost will always be relative. Like low to you, maybe, or mid cost to you is very high for me. But Karine, please, if you can also respond, and then we'll have one more question or comment from the audience before we wrap up.
Yeah, really the key issue to start with is to calibrate the sensors, check if they're working or not, and to really calibrate them. And then the correction factors are very location and sensor specific, and maybe it could be a challenge to address the manufacturer with, and to ask them to have these correction factors fitting the location and fitting the situation as part of the service. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Sir, please kindly introduce yourself again.
All right. My name is Arun Kanchan. I'm with AIT. On the Manila city, there was one of the one of the slides. If we can kind of go back to the slide which shows pre-correction, if that's possible, and it's actually a joint question for Dr. Kim as well. You have your uncorrected data, then you have the reference grade, kind of graph curve, and then you have the corrected data. Just 3 lines basically. So, my question is, Dr. Kim, years and years of using the term correlation, right? R squared, RMSC, those kind of factors, but not necessarily going into the cause and effect, setting up some metrics for cause. Why is there a delta? So the difference here between the reference grade and the uncorrected sensor data, is that mainly due to difference in technology? Okay, or is it local met conditions, or a combination thereof, which has been, decades after the study, such studies, has that been well defined? Is my question basically. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll come next year and ask the same questions basically.
1 meter. Okay. So Yes, to answer your question, I think it's combination. So for this, I see like with time, the arrow getting larger. That is the drift of the signal of the sensor. Because the longer time we get, the accuracy of the sensor will change. That will change. And secondly, it's meteorological condition. Here, I don't know when humidity is high, but in wet season, with rainy season, when humidity is really high, the PM sensor are optical sensor, so that it affected by humidity a lot. So that's why when humidity higher, then we can see more error of the sensor compared with reference. Because reference sensor, I guess they have humidity control and temperature control, and this not. So it's combination.
So sorry.
Look into that. We need
Yeah.
to really look at data point by point. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
All right, thank
We
you.
will dig more into this. We will not have enough time because I don't want to go beyond 5 o'clock because there's another session here. But let's just ask Dr. Camiotra to state his comment or question. We don't need necessarily to respond to it. Dr. Camiotra has been on this issue of air quality management for all his life.
I'm just asking clarification because we are also working with sensor-based system in our country. So what Professor Kim, you responded back. So first thing is what I feel. You can't, the variation if you see, it's quite a lot. But R square gives you a trend. So that's why R square is 0.7, so it seems a trend. But uncertainty is very high. And once the value are very low, if that is the uncertainty, if the values are high, what is the uncertainty? That's the first thing. Second thing is the resolution of this, the limit of this system is 1000 microgram. You are measuring 30 microgram. So what is the resolution?
Could be.
So resolution is very, very low. Third component is, Kevin mentioned that it's a meteorology dependent, temperature, humidity, and all this. But there is no inbuilt mechanism to take care of humidity or to take care of the temperature. That is also built in the algorithm. You see, that's also built in the algorithm. Next point, you are monitoring the particle number, and the number is converted to microgram, mass.
Is it?
Without taking into account the specific density, gravity of the soil. So these are the additional errors or uncertainties which come. So these need to be removed in your system to get a better data quality, which is not happening. And last question, is your system approved by any of the agencies in France? You have an institute which approves the sensor-based system, not in EU. EU does not have a guideline, but in France there is an agency which approves that. Do you have that approval? That's the last question. Thank you.
Okay, we will not respond to all the questions. By the way, Dr. Kamyotra was from Central Pollution Control Board in India. We've worked with him for a long time. Karin, if you have a brief response. Does France have an institution that approves or reviews, validates these low-cost sensor devices?
No, really the initiative we have with the International Microsensors Challenge and with the international boards and testing, independent testing, is the way we manage to address this question of local sensors. There is no official approval or labels of certificates of these local sensors, and especially because regarding the mandatory monitoring, they are not reliable enough.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Kao, briefly.
I tried answer as I think you made a very important point, but I think because in Vietnam now we are also monitoring PM 2.5 with some French imported monitoring device. So the weather condition, especially in the temperature and the humidity, is very important factors we need to consider for the also for the performance and also for the accuracy of the monitor data. My second point here is that for the data or for the equipment to be recognized or to be certified by the government, I think the manufacturers, they should take they should take the lead for this matter.
I just raise this issue because the flow is very, very low. Because if you are using a low cost low volume sampler, it's 16 point some liters. And if you are using the beta attenuation and TOM, you have a difference. But here the flow is very, very low, and the number of particles are just 1, 2, or 3, or 4. And when the calibration is done, it is done with a rounded particles. But when you are monitoring the micro PM. Yeah, so that's the problem. So missing of particles is very high in this case.
Very good, very good. Okay, I would like to thank our panelists. Thank you very much. We have the final session, the closing session. I will not attempt anymore to summarize the meeting. I just would like to remind, we had expected very few people to participate in these two sessions because we know that there are parallel sessions. But we realize that it is important, this issue of VOCs, and also it is very important, this issue of LCS. So EANET is going to work with the partners, with various organizations, guide countries on these issues. And if you signed up for the participants list, we will get you updated.